I'm Madison Powell, 38, the founder of Apex Solutions. After years of grinding building my company from the ground up, I was actually excited to attend my brother Kevin's wedding. Despite our strained relationship, I hoped this would be a fresh start. Little did I know that my $30 million contract with my future brother-in-law's company would become the center of a family showdown when I discovered where they expected me to sit. What would you do if your own family treated you like you were invisible? I was about to show them exactly how visible I could be. Before I dive into this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below, hit that like button, and if you're new here, subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself when it matters most. Now let me take you back to how this all began. Growing up in Westfield, Connecticut, Kevin and I were actually close as kids. Only 2 years apart, we spent summers building forts in the backyard and winters sledding down Maple Hill. Our mother Brenda would pack us identical lunches, and our father Martin taught us both how to fish on Lake Champlain during our annual family vacations. Those early memories were warm, safe, uncomplicated. The shift began subtly when we entered high school. Kevin joined the football team following in our father's footsteps. I gravitated toward computer science and the debate team. Our parents attended every one of Kevin's games, cheering loudly from the stands with neighborhood friends. My debate competitions and science fairs, they'd usually have something come up or arrive late, missing my presentations entirely. Business and sports build character, my father would say while clapping Kevin on the shoulder. All that computer stuff is just a hobby, Madison. You'll grow out of it. I didn't grow out of it. Instead, I earned a scholarship to MIT, while Kevin attended our father's alma mater on a partial athletic scholarship. During family holiday gatherings, conversations revolved around Kevin's fraternity adventures and football stats. My academic achievements were acknowledged with polite nods before someone changed the subject to something everyone could relate to. After graduation, I worked 80-hour weeks at a tech startup in Boston, learning everything I could about the industry. Meanwhile, Kevin joined Powell Construction, the family business my grandfather had started and my father had expanded. Kevin was immediately given a management position despite having a business degree that he barely earned with C average grades. It's about practical experience, not just book smarts, my mother explained when I questioned the fairness during a rare Sunday dinner visit. Kevin understands how the real world works. At 28, I took the biggest risk of my life. I cashed in my savings, secured a small business loan, and founded Apex Solutions. The first 2 years were brutal. I converted my one-bedroom apartment into an office space, sleeping on a pull-out couch in the living room. Ramen noodles became both breakfast and dinner as I poured every penny into the business. When I called home during that period, conversations were brief. "I'm worried about you, honey," my mother would say. "There's always a position at your father's company if this doesn't work out." They never offered to invest, never asked about my business plan, never seemed to believe I could succeed on my own terms. Then came the breakthrough. Apex developed a revolutionary supply chain management software that attracted attention from several major corporations. Suddenly, I was hiring employees, moving into a real office, and fielding calls from investors who had previously ignored my emails. It was during this upswing that Kevin met Heather Bradford at a charity golf tournament. Heather was the only daughter of Walter Bradford, the owner of Bradford Enterprises, a national commercial real estate development company worth billions. Their courtship was fast and flashy, with vacations to the Maldives and weekend trips to Paris. My parents were ecstatic. "Walter has taken quite a shine to Kevin," my mother gushed during one of our monthly phone calls. "He's introducing him to all the right people. This relationship could really take the family business to new heights." The irony wasn't lost on me. While my own business achievements were treated as a curious hobby, Kevin's relationship was celebrated as a strategic business move. 6 months into their relationship, Kevin and Heather announced their engagement. The Bradford and Powell families merged their social circles, with my parents suddenly attending country club events and charity galas they'd previously dismissed as pretentious. Meanwhile, through completely separate channels, Bradford Enterprises had been searching for a new technological solution to their increasingly complex supply chain issues. Their operations director, Deborah Wright, found Apex through an industry conference where I had presented our software. She had no idea about the family connection when she reached out. After 3 months of demonstrations, security audits, and negotiations, Bradford Enterprises signed a $30 million contract with Apex Solutions. It was the largest deal in my company's history, one that would allow us to expand internationally and develop new product lines. I mentioned the contract to my parents during our weekly call, hoping they might finally acknowledge my success. "That's nice, dear," my mother said. "Did you get the invitation to Kevin and Heather's engagement party?" "It's at the Bradford estate. Walter has his own golf course on the property." 2 weeks later at the engagement party, I met Walter Bradford for the first time. He was tall, impeccably dressed with silver hair and the confident posture of a man accustomed to being the most powerful person in any room. "So you're the brilliant mind behind Apex," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "Your team's presentation blew our tech department away. Deborah says your software will save us millions in the first year alone." "Thank you, Mr. Bradford. We're excited about the partnership. Please call me Walter, and we must set up a proper dinner soon. I'd love to hear more about where you see technology heading in our industry." Before I could respond, my mother appeared at my elbow, eyes wide with surprise. "You two have met?" she asked, looking between us. "Just now," I replied. "Walter was kind enough to compliment our software." "Your software?" Walter's eyebrows rose. "Wait, Powell, you're Kevin's sister." He never mentioned his sister ran Apex Solutions. An uncomfortable silence followed. My mother laughed nervously. "Oh, Madison has always been our little computer genius," she said, as if explaining away a child's quirky hobby. "Kevin focuses more on the construction side of things like his father." Walter looked confused but quickly recovered his composure. "Well, apparently genius runs in the family, just in different directions. This is a remarkable coincidence." It wasn't a coincidence that my brother had never mentioned my company to his future father-in-law. It was a deliberate omission. My success didn't fit the narrative Kevin had created about himself as the family achiever. Despite this revelation, I held on to hope that Kevin's wedding might be a turning point. Perhaps the undeniable evidence of my success through the Bradford contract would finally earn me the respect I'd worked so hard to achieve. I spent weeks selecting the perfect outfit, a tailored navy blue dress that projected both elegance and authority. I even arranged for Daniel Chen, a respected venture capitalist I'd been dating for 3 months, to accompany me. "Are you sure you want me there?" Daniel asked over dinner the week before the wedding. "From everything you've told me about your family dynamics, it sounds like it might be stressful." "That's exactly why I want you there," I admitted. "Having someone who sees me for who I actually am will help me keep perspective." The night before the wedding, I called Kevin, wanting to connect before the chaos of the event. "Hey, just wanted to say I'm really happy for you," I said when he answered. "And I'm looking forward to tomorrow." "Thanks, sis," he replied, sounding distracted. "It's crazy here. Heather's got the wedding planner on speed dial and Walter keeps adding people to the guest list." "Anything I can help with?" "Nah, we've got it covered." A pause. "Listen about the seating arrangements." "Yes. Nothing, just. We've had to make some last-minute changes with all the additions, but it's handled now. See you tomorrow, okay?" As I hung up, I felt a twinge of unease but pushed it aside. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, finally, I would be seen. The Bradford estate sprawled across 30 acres of manicured gardens with views of Long Island Sound in the distance. Cars lined the winding driveway, a mix of luxury vehicles that probably cost more than most people's homes. Daniel whistled low as we pulled up in my Tesla. "You didn't mention this was going to be quite so extravagant," he said, adjusting his tie. "I didn't know," I admitted. "This is my first time at the Bradford estate, too." A valet in a crisp uniform opened my door with a practiced smile. "Welcome to the Bradford Powell wedding, ma'am." The main house was a Georgian-style mansion with columns and symmetrical wings extending from either side. A string quartet played softly near an ornate fountain where guests in formal attire mingled champagne flutes in hand. White roses and orchids adorned every surface, their subtle fragrance mixing with the salt air from the nearby Sound. "Madison," my mother's voice carried across the garden. She approached in a pale pink dress that she'd mentioned purchasing specifically for the occasion during 3 separate phone calls. "You're here." And who is this? Mom, this is Daniel Chen. Daniel, my mother, Brenda Powell. Daniel extended his hand with a warm smile. Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Powell. You have a lovely family. Thank you, she replied, her eyes quickly assessing him before turning back to me. Madison, your father is by the bar with Walter and some of the investors. You should come say hello. She didn't wait for a response before turning and expecting us to follow. She seems nice, Daniel whispered, his tone gently teasing. Just wait, I murmured back. My father stood in a circle of men in dark suits, all laughing at something Walter Bradford had just said. When he spotted me, his smile faltered for just a moment before recovering. There's my girl, he said, giving me a quick, one-armed hug. And who's this young man? After introducing Daniel again, I turned to Walter Bradford, who greeted me with considerably more enthusiasm than my own father. Madison, the woman of the hour. I was just telling these gentlemen about how your software is revolutionizing our operations. 3 months in, and we're already seeing results. The men in the circle regarded me with new interest. You're behind the Apex system? Asked an older man with a southern accent. Bradford hasn't stopped talking about it. Says it's saving him a fortune in logistics alone. Before I could respond, my father cleared his throat. Well, Madison always did have a knack for computers. Kevin's the one who introduced her to Walter, didn't you know, always looking out for his little sister. The lie hung in the air between us. Walter Bradford's eyebrows rose slightly, but he said nothing to contradict my father. Actually, I began but was interrupted by the appearance of the bride herself. Heather Bradford floated toward us in a cloud of white designer silk, her blonde hair arranged in an elaborate updo adorned with tiny diamond clips that caught the sunlight. Madison, you came, she exclaimed, air-kissing both my cheeks. And in navy blue, how practical. Her gaze flicked over my carefully chosen dress with the barest hint of a dismissive smile. Though I thought I mentioned the family was wearing pastels for the photos. You didn't actually, I replied evenly. But congratulations, Heather. Everything looks beautiful. Doesn't it Daddy spared no expense? She beamed, linking her arm through Walter's. Kevin's getting ready with his groomsmen. The ceremony starts in 30 minutes. Her eyes landed on Daniel with unexpected interest. And who might this be? After introductions, Heather's demeanor warmed noticeably. Daniel Chen of Horizon Ventures. Why, Daddy's mentioned your firm before. You really must join us at the family table for the reception. Daniel's hand found the small of my back. Thank you, but I'll be sitting with Madison. Of course, of course. Heather's smile tightened. Speaking of which, I should check with the wedding planner about the final seating arrangements. So many last-minute changes. As she glided away, Daniel leaned close to my ear. Is it my imagination, or did the temperature just drop 20 degrees? The ceremony itself was elaborate but impersonal, with a famous string quartet, a celebrity officiant, and vows that sounded like they'd been written by a publicist. Kevin looked handsome but nervous in his tuxedo, his eyes rarely meeting Heather's during their exchange of vows. Afterward, guests were directed to a massive tent set up on the lawn for the reception. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over dozens of round tables draped in white linen and centered with towering floral arrangements. Let's find our seats, I suggested to Daniel, scanning the room for a seating chart. A harried-looking wedding planner with a tablet stood near the entrance directing guests. When I gave her my name, she frowned and scrolled through her list several times. Powell, that's odd. Let me check another list. A sense of foreboding crept up my spine as she continued searching. Here we are. Madison Powell +1. You're at... Oh. Her professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing discomfort. Is there a problem? Daniel asked. No problem. Just... a moment, please. She hurried away, disappearing into the crowd. 5 uncomfortable minutes later, she returned with an older woman who introduced herself as the catering manager. Miss Powell, there seems to have been an oversight with the seating arrangements, she explained in a low voice. The main reception tables are all filled to capacity. Now I RSVP'd 2 months ago, I replied, and I'm the groom's sister. The catering manager nodded apologetically. Yes, we understand. We've arranged alternative seating for you and your guest. Alternative seating, Daniel repeated. If you'll follow me, please. Rather than leading us to any of the tables in the main reception area, she guided us through a side door and down a hallway. The sounds of the celebration grew more distant with each step. Finally, she opened a door to reveal the kitchen where staff in black and white uniforms bustled about preparing food. In the corner stood a small table with 2 chairs hastily covered with a white tablecloth. "You can't be serious," I said, feeling heat rise to my face. "I do apologize for the inconvenience," the manager replied, not quite meeting my eyes. The bride made some last-minute changes to accommodate important business associates. "I am a business associate," I pointed out. "Bradford Enterprises just signed a $30 million contract with my company." The manager looked genuinely confused. I wasn't informed of that. I'm just following the instructions I was given." Before she could continue, Heather appeared in the doorway, champagne flute in hand. Her eyes gleamed with barely concealed satisfaction as she surveyed the scene. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her voice saccharine. "Yes, there's a problem," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. "You've seated me and my guest in the kitchen. I'm your husband's sister." Heather took a slow sip of her champagne before responding. "We had to prioritize Madison. Daddy's business associates and our close friends needed the premium tables. I'm sure you understand." "Actually, I don't," I countered. "And I think Kevin would be upset to know you've relegated his sister to the kitchen." Something cold flashed in Heather's eyes. "Kevin approved the seating chart this morning. He knows exactly where everyone is sitting." The betrayal hit like a physical blow. My own brother had agreed to this humiliation. "This is completely inappropriate," Daniel said firmly. "We'll be joining the main reception." Heather's perfect mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the contempt beneath. "The help eats in the kitchen," she sneered, gesturing dismissively. "You should feel right at home considering your humble beginnings." The catering manager looked mortified, backing away from the confrontation. Several kitchen staff members paused in their work, awkwardly pretending not to listen. In that moment, something inside me snapped. Decades of being diminished, overlooked, and now openly disrespected crystallized into perfect clarity. I wouldn't cause a scene. I wouldn't lower myself to Heather's level. But I would no longer accept being treated as less than. "Daniel," I said quietly, "I need a moment alone. Would you mind waiting for me outside?" He squeezed my hand in understanding. "Take all the time you need. I'll be right outside." After they left, I stood alone in the bustling kitchen, invisible to my own family, yet responsible for a multi-million-dollar contract that would benefit the very people who couldn't bother to give me a seat at their table. I knew exactly what I needed to do. The women's restroom off the main hallway was empty, thankfully. I locked myself in a stall, leaned against the door, and finally allowed the tears of humiliation to fall. I covered my mouth to muffle the sound, not wanting anyone who might enter to hear me breaking down. How had I deluded myself into believing this wedding would be different, that my success would finally earn me a place in my own family? The pattern was so clear now, stretching back through the years like a roadmap of dismissal and favoritism. I remembered my 16th birthday when my parents forgot, because Kevin had a regional football championship the same weekend. They'd hastily bought a cake from the grocery store 3 days later, the candles sinking into melting frosting as they explained how proud they were of Kevin's performance. Then there was my college graduation from MIT summa cum laude. My parents arrived an hour late, missing my speech as valedictorian, because Kevin's fraternity had an alumni breakfast they couldn't possibly miss. They brought him along to my celebration dinner, where he dominated the conversation with stories about his summer internship at a friend's father's company. And the day I signed the lease on my first real office space for Apex, I'd called home bursting with pride, only to be told they couldn't talk long because they were hosting a barbecue to celebrate Kevin's promotion to vice president at Powell Construction, a title created specifically for him. Even today, on what should have been one of the happiest days for a family, I was literally being hidden away, deemed unworthy of sitting with important people, despite my own significant achievements. A gentle knock on the bathroom door startled me out of my thoughts. "Madison, it's Daniel. Are you okay?" I wiped my eyes, took a deep breath, and opened the door. Daniel stood there, concern etched across his face, holding 2 flutes of champagne. "Thought you might need this," he said, offering me a glass. I accepted it gratefully, taking a long sip. "I'm sorry you're witnessing this family dysfunction." He leaned against the wall beside me. Don't apologize. If anything, I'm getting a very illuminating look at what you've been dealing with your entire life. And yet I still came still hoping for, I don't even know what. Acceptance recognition. The basic respect any person deserves from their family. Those aren't unreasonable things to want, Madison, Daniel suggested gently. I sipped my champagne considering his words. The thing is, I don't actually need their approval anymore. I built Apex without their support. I have a team that respects me, clients who value what I've created, and friends who see me for who I really am. I glanced at him. I have you. You certainly do, he confirmed with a warm smile. So what do you want to do? We can leave right now, get dinner somewhere else, maybe catch a movie, pretend this whole wedding fiasco never happened. My phone buzzed in my clutch. I pulled it out to see Deborah Wright's name on the screen. I should take this, I said, straightening. It's the operations director from Bradford Enterprises. Daniel nodded and stepped away to give me privacy. Deborah, is everything okay? Everything's fine, Madison. Just wanted to confirm our meeting next week about the Phase 2 implementation and to let you know the first payment for the contract was processed this morning, $30 million right on schedule. As Deborah continued discussing technical details, a realization dawned on me. I wasn't powerless here. I had built something valuable, something even Walter Bradford couldn't dismiss. And while I couldn't change how my family saw me, I could change how I responded to their treatment. Deborah, can I call you back in about 20 minutes? I'm actually at the Bradford Powell wedding right now. Oh, I didn't realize you were attending. Of course, enjoy the celebration. We can talk Monday. After hanging up, I turned to find Daniel watching me with curiosity. What are you thinking? He asked, recognizing the shift in my demeanor. I'm thinking that I've spent my entire life hoping my family would recognize my worth. I replied, surprising myself with how calm I felt. But maybe it's time I recognized it myself and acted accordingly. What does that mean exactly? I smoothed my dress and checked my reflection in the mirror, wiping away the last traces of tears. It means I'm not going to hide in the kitchen like I'm ashamed of who I am. It means I'm going to walk back into that reception with my head held high. And it means I'm going to make a business decision based on how I've been treated, not on family obligation. Daniel's eyes widened slightly as understanding dawned. The Bradford contract. Exactly. Walter Bradford wants the benefits of my company's software, but his daughter and my brother think I'm only worthy of sitting with the kitchen staff. That's not a business relationship I want to maintain. Are you sure about this? It's a $30 million contract. I took a deep breath, calculating exactly what this would mean for Apex. Yes, the Bradford contract was significant, but it wasn't our only major client. We had diversified well over the past 2 years. Losing the contract would hurt, but it wouldn't devastate us. And the message it would send was worth far more than the money. I've never been more sure of anything, I replied. I deserve better than this both personally and professionally, and it's time everyone understood that. Daniel smiled slowly. Then I'm with you, whatever you decide to do. We walked back toward the reception together, my mind clear and my purpose defined. For the first time that day, I felt a sense of peace, not because I was about to retaliate, but because I was finally valuing myself enough to establish boundaries even with family. Just outside the reception tent, I paused watching through the opening as Kevin and Heather moved from table to table greeting guests. They stopped at the head table where Walter Bradford sat with several distinguished-looking men in expensive suits, all laughing and raising glasses in a toast. That's where I should be sitting, I said quietly. Not because I'm Kevin's sister, but because I'm the CEO of a company that Bradford Enterprises desperately needs. Then let's make sure they understand exactly who they decided to seat in the kitchen, Daniel replied, offering me his arm. With my head held high and my decision made, I stepped back into the reception, no longer seeking approval, but ready to command the respect I'd earned. The reception was in full swing when Daniel and I re-entered the tent. A jazz band played from a raised platform, while waitstaff circulated with trays of hors d'oeuvres and champagne. Crystal and silver gleamed under the chandeliers, and the buzz of conversation mixed with occasional laughter. No one seemed to notice our return, which was fitting given how they tried to render me invisible in the first place. I scanned the room until I spotted what I was looking for: the head table where Walter Bradford sat with Kevin and Heather, along with what appeared to be several key business associates. "They're discussing the merger," Daniel murmured, following my gaze. "I recognize Stephen Harrington from Coastal Development. If they're bringing him in, Bradford must be planning a major expansion." That explained the important business associates who had taken priority over family. Walter was using his daughter's wedding as a business opportunity, and Kevin was playing along, probably hoping to benefit from the connections. "Perfect timing," I replied, straightening my shoulders. "Shall we?" We made our way across the room, pausing occasionally as guests I didn't recognize congratulated me on my brother's beautiful wedding. Each time I thanked them politely before continuing toward the head table. As we approached, I could hear Walter mid-pitch. "Combining our resources with Powell Construction for the residential components while maintaining Bradford's focus on commercial properties. Kevin here will oversee the transition. With the new software system we've implemented, we expect to increase efficiency by at least 20% in the first year alone." Kevin nodded eagerly, clearly pleased to be presented as a key player in this business discussion. Heather sat beside him, one hand possessively on his arm, while she surveyed the room with the satisfied look of someone who had everything arranged exactly as she wanted. They didn't notice me until I was standing directly at the table. Walter saw me first, his expression shifting from surprise to discomfort. "Madison," he said, straightening in his chair, "we were just discussing business, something about software implementation that might interest you." "Yes, I heard," I replied calmly. "You were discussing the software my company created, the one your operations director specifically sought out because it's the best in the industry." Kevin's smile faltered as he looked between Walter and me. "Mads, maybe we can talk about this later. We're kind of in the middle of something here." "Yes, I can see that. Using your wedding reception to negotiate business deals while seating your own sister in the kitchen. Very efficient use of time." A hush fell over the immediate area. The businessmen at the table glanced at each other uncomfortably. "There was a misunderstanding with the seating," Heather interjected, her voice tight. "These things happen at large events." "Do they? Funny how the misunderstanding resulted in the CEO of a company you just paid $30 million to being seated with the catering staff while business prospects got priority treatment." Walter Bradford's expression darkened. "30 million? What are you talking about?" "Vanessa, your company signed a contract with Apex Solutions 3 months ago. I'm the founder and CEO of Apex. The software you were just bragging about, that's my creation." Walter's face registered genuine shock as he turned to Kevin. "You never mentioned your sister was the head of Apex." Kevin shifted uncomfortably. It didn't seem relevant at the time. "Not relevant," I echoed. "You didn't think it was relevant that your sister's company was providing the technology your father-in-law was investing millions in." "Now isn't the time for this discussion," Heather hissed, her perfect composure cracking. "You're making a scene at our wedding." I reached for my phone, my movements deliberate and calm. "You're right. This isn't a discussion. This is a business decision." I dialed a number from my contacts and held the phone to my ear, maintaining eye contact with Kevin as it rang. "Brandon, it's Madison Powell." I spoke clearly, loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. "I need you to cancel the $30 million contract with Bradford Enterprises, effective immediately." Kevin's face went pale, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Walter Bradford half rose from his chair, his expression a mixture of confusion and mounting anger. "Madison, what are you doing?" he demanded. I held up one finger, continuing my conversation. "Yes, I understand the implications. No, this isn't a negotiating tactic. Please have legal prepare the termination paperwork immediately. I'll be in first thing Monday morning to sign everything." Heather's composure shattered completely. "You can't do that. Daddy just implemented your system across all our properties." I ended the call and slipped my phone back into my clutch. "I can and I have. Apex Solutions doesn't partner with companies that demonstrate such poor judgment and lack of basic professional courtesy." "This is absurd," Walter sputtered. "You're canceling a multi-million-dollar contract because of a seating arrangement." "No, Mr. Bradford. I'm canceling it because this seating arrangement revealed the fundamental character of your organization. If this is how you treat a CEO when you think she's just someone's sister, I have serious concerns about how you'll honor our partnership when larger issues arise." The business associates at the table were watching with keen interest, now clearly reassessing both me and the Bradford Powell alliance. Kevin, Walter turned to my brother, his voice dangerously low. Did you know about this? About who your sister is in relation to our company? Kevin swallowed hard. I knew she had a tech company. I didn't realize it was the same one you were working with. That's a lie, I said quietly. Deborah Wright mentioned our family connection to you 3 weeks ago when she discovered it. She told me she spoke to you directly. Kevin's face confirmed the truth before he could formulate another denial. Walter's expression hardened as he realized he'd been deliberately kept in the dark. We need to discuss this, now. Walter stood abruptly, grabbing Kevin's arm. Somewhere private. Heather rose as well, her face flushed with anger. You're ruining everything, she hissed at me. This wedding cost over $2 million and you're turning it into a business dispute. No, Heather. You ruined it when you decided I wasn't good enough to sit with my own family. I maintained my composure, refusing to match her emotional outburst. I simply decided I wasn't going to accept that treatment any longer. As Walter led Kevin away, with Heather following closely behind, Daniel placed his hand on the small of my back. That, he said quietly, was the most professionally executed takedown I have ever witnessed. For the first time that day, I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. Let's get out of here. I suddenly have a taste for real food, preferably somewhere where I can sit at an actual table. As we turned to leave, several of the business associates from the head table approached me, business cards appearing from inside suit jackets. Miss Powell, Stephen Harrington Coastal Development. I'd be very interested in learning more about what Apex Solutions has to offer. Another man stepped forward. Howard Winters, Apex Investments. I've been following your company's growth. Perhaps we could schedule a meeting next week. The very people Walter and Kevin had been courting were now approaching me directly. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I didn't feel any particular satisfaction from it. This wasn't about revenge or one-upmanship. It was about standing up for myself and my company's value. I accepted their cards politely but didn't linger. My assistant will be in touch to arrange meetings, but right now I'm afraid I need to leave. As Daniel and I walked out of the tent, the sounds of raised voices could be heard coming from the direction Walter had taken Kevin. The perfect wedding was unraveling not because of my actions, but because of the choices they had made long before I arrived. We had barely reached the valet stand when my phone began ringing repeatedly. I silenced it without looking at the caller ID, already knowing who it would be. The young valet brought my Tesla around, his eyes widening slightly as he handed me the keys. Nice car, he commented. Thanks, I replied, tipping him generously. It's amazing what you can afford when you build your own company instead of relying on family connections. Daniel chuckled as he slid into the passenger seat. Feeling a bit petty, are we? Just a touch, I admitted, starting the engine. I think I've earned it today. Before I could pull away, a familiar figure appeared in my side mirror, moving quickly across the parking area. My father, his face flushed and tie askew, was practically jogging toward the car. Madison, stop right there, young lady. I sighed and rolled down the window but kept the engine running. Yes, Dad. He reached the car, breathing heavily from the exertion. What the hell do you think you're doing? Walter Bradford is livid. Kevin's wedding is in shambles. Your mother is in tears, and it's all because you couldn't handle a simple seating mix-up. A mix-up, I repeated incredulously. They seated me in the kitchen, Dad. The kitchen, and Heather made it very clear it was deliberate. So, what, you sit where you're told at someone else's wedding, that's basic manners, but instead you had to make it all about you and your wounded pride. Daniel leaned forward. Sir, with all due respect, your daughter is the CEO of a successful technology company that Bradford Enterprises sought out specifically because of its excellence. She deserves better treatment than she received today. My father's eyes narrowed as he took in Daniel for the first time. And who exactly are you to tell me how my daughter should be treated? Dad, this is Daniel Chen. He's with me. And he's right. This wasn't about pride. It was about basic respect, something I haven't received from this family in a very long time. Respect. My father's voice rose. You want to talk about respect when you just canceled a contract with your brother's father-in-law? Do you have any idea what you've done to Kevin's position in the family? Walter was going to make him a partner in their next development project. And there it was. The real concern wasn't about me or even about the wedding. It was about Kevin's business opportunity, his chance to climb higher on the ladder of success that had always been extended to him while I built my own from scratch. I'm sorry if my actions impacted Kevin's business prospects. I said, not feeling sorry at all. But I need to protect my company's interests and my own professional reputation. Bradford Enterprises doesn't get to treat me like a second-class citizen while benefiting from my technology. You need to fix this, my father insisted. Call them back. Tell them it was a misunderstanding that you were emotional because of the wedding. I will not, I replied firmly. The decision stands, and if anything, this conversation only confirms I made the right choice. My mother appeared behind my father, her carefully applied makeup now smudged around her eyes. Madison, please. Kevin is devastated. Can't you see what you're doing to this family? What I'm doing. I felt a laugh escape, though there was no humor in it. I've spent my entire life being overlooked and dismissed by this family. I built a successful company without any support or encouragement from any of you. And the first time I stand up for myself, I'm the one destroying the family. That's not fair, my mother protested weakly. We've always been proud of you. Really, name one time you've bragged about my accomplishments the way you constantly broadcast Kevin's. One time you've introduced me to someone important with the same enthusiasm you just showed for Kevin's connection to the Bradfords. Her silence was answer enough. The commotion had attracted attention. Several wedding guests had gathered at a distance watching the family drama unfold with poorly disguised interest. Among them, I spotted cousin Chloe, who had witnessed the kitchen incident earlier and now gave me a subtle thumbs up from behind my parents' backs. I think we should continue this conversation another time, I suggested, acutely aware of the audience, when emotions aren't running so high. There's nothing to discuss, my father replied coldly. You've made your choice very clear today. Kevin is family, Walter Bradford is now family, and you just declared yourself against both of them. No, Dad. I declared myself worthy of basic respect. There's a difference. Before he could respond, another figure emerged from the main house. Kevin, his face ashen and his perfect wedding attire now rumpled, approached the car with Heather and Walter Bradford trailing several steps behind. Mads, what the hell? Kevin's voice cracked with emotion. Walter is talking about pulling all his business from Powell Construction now. Do you know what that would do to Dad's company? I'm sorry, Kevin, that wasn't my intention. But it's the result, he shouted, uncharacteristically losing his composure. You couldn't just sit where you were told for one day. You had to make some grandstand about your stupid tech company. Daniel tensed beside me, but I placed a hand on his arm, silently asking him to let me handle this. My stupid tech company is valued at over $200 million, Kevin. It employs 65 people, and until an hour ago it was providing essential services to Bradford Enterprises. I didn't make a grandstand. I made a business decision based on how I was treated. Fix it, Kevin demanded. Call whoever you called and tell them it was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake, I replied calmly, and I'm not going to pretend it was just to salvage your business opportunity. Heather pushed past Kevin, her perfect bridal appearance now considerably disheveled. This is all your fault, she practically screeched. You've ruined the most important day of my life because your feelings got hurt over a stupid table. Heather, that's enough. Walter Bradford's authoritative voice cut through his daughter's tirade. He approached the car with measured steps, his expression unreadable. Miss Powell, I think there's been a serious miscommunication today. There's been no miscommunication, Mr. Bradford. Your daughter made it very clear where she thought I belonged. I see. He glanced at Heather, who had the grace to look momentarily abashed. Nevertheless, I think we should discuss this privately as business professionals. The contract between our companies is significant, and terminating it so abruptly would have serious consequences for both parties. I'm aware of the consequences, I replied. My decision stands. Walter's composed facade cracked slightly. You're willing to throw away $30 million over a seating arrangement. I'm willing to walk away from a business relationship where I'm not respected. The money is secondary. A flash of something that might have been respect crossed Walter's face before he schooled his features back to neutrality. I see. Well, my legal team will be in touch regarding the termination procedures. I'll have my team ready to facilitate a smooth transition, I assured him. Despite everything, I don't want your operations to suffer unnecessarily. This professional exchange seemed to infuriate Heather even more. Daddy, you can't just let her do this. She's trying to ruin us because she's jealous of what Kevin and I have. Walter turned to his daughter with a sharpness I hadn't seen before. Heather, you've done quite enough for one day. Go back inside and attend to our guests. We'll discuss this later. As Heather stormed off, followed by my parents, Walter leaned closer to my window. For what it's worth, he said quietly. I had no idea about the seating situation. Had I known, I would have intervened. Thank you for saying that, I replied. But it doesn't change my decision. He nodded once, straightening. I understand. And while I disagree with your choice from a business perspective, I can't say I don't admire your principles. He extended his hand. Good day, Miss Powell. I shook his hand briefly before putting the car in drive. Kevin remained standing in the driveway, his expression a mixture of anger and disbelief as we pulled away. That was intense, Daniel commented as we turned onto the main road. Are you okay? I took a deep breath, feeling the tension of the day begin to ease from my shoulders. Honestly, I feel better than I have in years. Like I finally stopped carrying a weight I didn't even realize I was bearing. The weight of seeking their approval, Daniel suggested. Exactly. I glanced in the rearview mirror at the Bradford estate receding in the distance. I spent so long trying to prove myself to people who were never going to see my value. Today I finally saw it for myself. So what now? Daniel asked. Besides finding a place with excellent food and proper seating arrangements, I laughed a genuine laugh that surprised me with its lightness. Now we rebuild. Apex will be fine without the Bradford contract. We have other clients, other opportunities, and I have something I never fully had before. What's that? Self-respect, I replied simply, and it turns out that's worth more than 30 million. The first email arrived at 6:43 a.m. Monday morning. By the time I walked into the Apex Solutions office at 8:00, my inbox contained 17 messages from various executives at Bradford Enterprises ranging from apologetic to desperate. Deborah Wright had sent 3 alone, each more urgent than the last. Good morning, Karen. I greeted my assistant as I passed her desk. I assume you've seen the email situation. Karen nodded, her expression concerned. It's been non-stop since before I arrived. Deborah Wright has called twice already. She sounds stressed. And Mr. Bradford himself called 5 minutes ago asking when you'd be available to speak with him. Schedule a call with Deborah for 10:00. As for Walter Bradford, tell him I'm in meetings all day but can speak with him tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow? Karen's eyebrows rose. He seemed to think it was rather urgent. I'm sure he did, I replied mildly, but I need time to prepare our transition plan with the team before I discuss anything with him. I had just settled at my desk when Brandon Phillips, our chief operating officer, appeared in my doorway, his expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. So, he began, leaning against the doorframe. Want to tell me what happened at your brother's wedding that resulted in you canceling our biggest contract to date? I gestured for him to close the door and take a seat. It's a long story, but the short version is that Bradford Enterprises, or more specifically the Bradford family, demonstrated that they don't respect me or this company. I decided we shouldn't be doing business with people who don't value us properly. Brandon whistled low. That must have been some wedding. You have no idea, I replied briefly, recounting the kitchen incident and the subsequent confrontation. When I finished, Brandon was silent for a moment. I'd like to say I'm shocked, but after everything you've told me about your family over the years, it unfortunately tracks. The question now is how we move forward, I said, refocusing on the business implications. The Bradford contract represented about 22% of our projected annual revenue. We need to make up that shortfall. Already working on it, Brandon assured me. That demonstration we did for Westfield Partners last month, they've been on the fence about implementing our system, but I think with a small incentive we could lock them in. It wouldn't completely replace Bradford, but it would help soften the blow. Make it happen, I authorized. And let's accelerate the timeline on the international expansion. The European market has been showing interest, and without the Bradford implementation taking up resources, we could redirect some of our team there. Our conversation was interrupted by Karen buzzing my intercom. Madison, I have Stephen Harrington from Coastal Development on line 1. He says it's regarding a potential contract. I exchanged a surprised look with Brandon. Stephen Harrington from the wedding. Want me to give you some privacy? Brandon offered, starting to rise. No, stay. I want your input on this. I pressed the speaker button. Mr. Harrington, this is Madison Powell. Miss Powell, thank you for taking my call. I hope I'm not interrupting your morning. Not at all. What can I do for you? Well, after our brief interaction at the Bradford Powell wedding, I took the liberty of researching Apex Solutions more thoroughly. I'm quite impressed with what you've built, and I believe Coastal Development could benefit significantly from your supply chain management system. I maintained a professional tone despite my surprise. I appreciate your interest, Mr. Harrington. We'd be happy to arrange a demonstration of our software at your convenience. Excellent. And there's one more thing. I understand your relationship with Bradford Enterprises may be concluding. Coastal Development has been considering a partnership with them on several projects, but after witnessing Saturday's events, I'm reconsidering whether they're the right fit for our corporate culture. Brandon's eyes widened and I had to suppress a smile. I see. Well, Mr. Harrington, while I can't comment on Bradford's corporate culture, I can assure you that at Apex we value professionalism and respect in all our business relationships. That was evident from how you handled a rather difficult situation, he replied. I'll have my assistant coordinate with yours for that demonstration. Looking forward to it, Miss Powell. After ending the call, Brandon let out a low whistle. Well, that was unexpected. What exactly happened at this wedding? Let's just say it made an impression on several people. I replied, still processing this development. We should prepare our best presentation for Coastal. Their property portfolio is even larger than Bradford's. By lunchtime, news of the contract cancellation had spread through the company. While I hadn't shared the personal details, the senior team understood that something significant had occurred to prompt such a drastic decision. To their credit, no one questioned my judgment, instead focusing on solutions and next steps. My 10-hunter call with Deborah had been difficult but professional. She was understandably upset about losing a system her team had spent months implementing, but her anger seemed directed more at the situation than at me personally. For what it's worth, she'd said near the end of our conversation, I had no idea about the seating incident until Walter told me this morning. It was completely unprofessional and inappropriate. I appreciate that, Deborah, and I want you to know this isn't a reflection on your team's work with us. You've been excellent partners throughout the implementation process. Is there any way we could salvage this? She asked. Perhaps with different terms or conditions? I don't think so, I replied honestly. Some lines once crossed can't be uncrossed, but I promise we'll do everything possible to ensure a smooth transition to whatever system you choose next. At 3:00, my personal cell phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I would let it go to voicemail, but something prompted me to answer. Madison Powell speaking. Madison, this is Diane Powell, your aunt, your father's sister. I was momentarily speechless. Aunt Diane had been estranged from our family for nearly 20 years following some disagreement with my father that was never fully explained to us children. Aunt Diane, this is unexpected. How did you get my number? I have my ways, she replied with a hint of amusement. And I've been keeping tabs on you from a distance. Your success with Apex is impressive, though not surprising to me. You always were the smart one. Thank you, I said, still confused by this sudden contact. But why are you calling now after all these years? Because I heard about what happened at Kevin's wedding, she replied simply. Word travels fast in certain circles, and the Bradford family is nothing if not well connected. Oh, I said, not sure how to respond. And you called to tell you I'm proud of you, she said firmly. Standing up to the Powell family tradition of favoring the male heir over the female innovator. It's about time someone broke that cycle. What do you mean? Diane sighed, a sound heavy with old wounds. Madison, why do you think I haven't spoken to your father in 20 years? It's the same story, different generation. I built a successful interior design firm in the 80s when women weren't exactly welcomed in the construction industry. Your grandfather and father decided my business was a cute hobby and gave the family construction company entirely to your father, even though I had worked there every summer and holiday since I was 16. The parallels were unmistakable. I had no idea, I admitted. Dad never really explained why you weren't around. Of course he didn't, Diane replied without bitterness. It didn't fit the narrative. But I want you to know that what you did standing up for yourself means something. It breaks a pattern that's been in our family for generations. We talked for nearly an hour, Diane filling in gaps in my understanding of our family history and sharing her own journey of building a business without family support. By the time we hung up, we had plans to meet for dinner the following week, a reconnection that felt both surprising and somehow inevitable. The remainder of the afternoon brought more unexpected developments. Howard Winters from Apex Investments called to discuss not just a potential contract for his company's supply chain needs, but the possibility of Apex making a strategic investment in Apex Solutions to fund our international expansion. Your handling of the Bradford situation showed exactly the kind of principled leadership we look for in investment opportunities, he explained. Sometimes walking away from the wrong partnership is more valuable than securing a new one. By 500, I had instructed our legal team to prepare termination paperwork for the Bradford contract, while simultaneously exploring 3 new potential client relationships that had emerged directly from connections made at the wedding. The irony wasn't lost on me. As I was preparing to leave for the day, my phone buzzed with a text from Kevin, the first contact since our confrontation. Need to talk, in person, just you and me. Tomorrow lunch. I stared at the message for a long moment, weighing my response. Despite everything, he was still my brother, and while I wasn't seeking reconciliation, I was open to hearing what he had to say. Okay, 1:00 p.m. Luciano's on 5th, just us. His reply came immediately. Thank you. As I drove home that evening, I reflected on how differently the day had unfolded than I had anticipated. Instead of damage control and revenue scrambling, we were fielding new opportunities and potentially stronger partnerships. The act of valuing myself had seemingly led others to value Apex more highly as well. Daniel called as I was making dinner, wanting to check in after the eventful day. So did Bradford Enterprises implode without your software yet? He teased. Not yet, but Deborah Wright sounded pretty close to panic this morning, I admitted. But the strangest thing happened today. Actually, several strange things. I told him about the calls from Stephen Harrington and Howard Winters, the unexpected reconnection with Aunt Diane, and Kevin's request to meet. It's like by standing up for myself, I accidentally tapped into some alternate universe where people actually respect boundaries and recognize value, I concluded. Or maybe, Daniel suggested gently, this is just what the world looks like when you stop accepting less than you deserve. His words stayed with me long after we hung up. Perhaps this wasn't an alternate universe at all. Perhaps it was simply the natural consequence of finally recognizing my own worth and expecting others to do the same. The email from Walter Bradford arrived just before midnight, a formal request for a meeting to discuss mutually beneficial resolution options. I marked it for consideration but didn't respond immediately. Whatever happened next would be on my terms, not his. For perhaps the first time in my professional life, I felt completely centered in my own value, neither seeking external validation nor fearing disapproval. It was a powerful feeling, this newfound certainty, and it had taken a wedding seating chart to finally bring it into focus. Weeks after the wedding incident, I sat across from Deborah Wright at a corner table in Luciano's, the same restaurant where I'd met with Kevin for our tentative reconciliation lunch. The difference in atmosphere was striking. While my conversation with Kevin had been tense and emotional, this meeting with Deborah was relaxed, almost friendly. The transition to the alternative system is proceeding, but it's not going well, Deborah admitted, stirring her coffee between us. Walter is regretting how everything played out. The replacement software is already 3 weeks behind schedule, and the developers can't seem to replicate some of Apex's key features. I'm sorry to hear that, I replied, genuinely meaning it. Your team worked hard on the implementation. It's unfortunate they have to start over. Deborah set down her spoon with purpose. That's actually why I wanted to meet in person off the record. Walter is too proud to approach you directly again after your last meeting, but there's growing consensus among the executive team that we made a serious mistake letting Apex go. The meeting she referred to had occurred 2 weeks after the wedding. Walter Bradford had requested a private discussion at his office, presumably to attempt to salvage the contract. I had agreed but made it clear I wasn't there to negotiate terms. Miss Powell. He had begun, his tone carefully calibrated between authority and conciliation. I've reviewed the situation thoroughly, and I believe there's room for us to find a mutually beneficial path forward. Mr. Bradford, I appreciate your time, but my decision is final. The contract termination paperwork has already been processed. Perhaps we could discuss a new contract then, he suggested. With more favorable terms for Apex. My technical team informs me that replacing your system will be considerably more difficult than anticipated. This isn't about terms or conditions, I had explained. It's about a fundamental lack of respect that was demonstrated not just by your daughter but by my brother, and by extension your entire organization. I choose to work with partners who value what Apex brings to the table, not those who see us as servants to be seated in the kitchen. Walter had been silent for a long moment. I understand your position better than you might think, he finally said. I built Bradford Enterprises from a single property my father left me. For years, I was dismissed by the established players in the industry, seated at back tables at events, excluded from deals. It wasn't until I had enough leverage to demand respect that anything changed. Then you should understand exactly why I can't continue our business relationship, I had replied. You of all people should know that sometimes you have to walk away to maintain your integrity. Something shifted in his expression, then a grudging respect replacing his business-like facade. Your brother doesn't deserve you, he said unexpectedly. And for what it's worth, my daughter's behavior was inexcusable. I've made that abundantly clear to both of them. That had been the end of our direct communication until now, with Deborah serving as an unofficial intermediary. What exactly are you suggesting, Deborah? I asked, returning to the present conversation. A complete reset, she replied. New contract, new terms, new points of contact within the organization. Walter is willing to issue a formal apology for the wedding incident in writing, acknowledging the unprofessional treatment you received. And Kevin and Heather, Deborah winced slightly. That's more complicated. From what I understand, they're having some marital adjustments. Heather has been removed from any involvement in company affairs for the foreseeable future. This aligned with what Kevin had shared during our lunch meeting. After the initial anger and accusations had subsided, he'd admitted that the wedding disaster had exposed serious issues in his new marriage. Heather was the one who changed the seating chart. He'd confessed, unable to meet my eyes. She's always been jealous of your success. Said it made me look bad if my sister was more accomplished than me. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't stop her. And that's supposed to make it better, I had asked. That you knew it was happening and chose not to intervene. No, he replied quietly. It makes it worse. I've spent our entire adult lives trying to maintain this image of myself as the successful one, the one carrying on the Powell legacy. And when you started doing well, really well, I couldn't handle it. It was easier to diminish your accomplishments than to admit you had surpassed me. His honesty had been unexpected, and in its way more meaningful than any apology could have been. We weren't magically repaired, but it was a starting point, an acknowledgement of the dysfunctional patterns that had shaped our relationship for decades. I need to think about it, I told Deborah, now considering Bradford's proposal. Apex has secured several new contracts in the past month. We're not in the same position we were when we first signed with Bradford. I understand, Deborah nodded. But I hope you'll consider it. Despite everything, our teams worked well together on the technical side. I promised to give her an answer within the week and walked her out to the street, where we parted with a handshake that felt more genuine than any interaction I'd had with Bradford Enterprises before the wedding incident. Later that evening, Daniel and I sat on my balcony overlooking the city, sharing a bottle of wine as I recounted the meeting with Deborah. So are you considering it? He asked. Taking Bradford back as a client. I swirled the wine in my glass, considering. Honestly, I'm not sure. On one hand, it would be good for Apex financially. On the other hand, there's something to be said for maintaining boundaries once they've been established. What does your team think? Brandon believes we should consider it, but only with significant contractual protections and a substantial increase in fees. Karen thinks we should pass and focus on the new clients who sought us out specifically because of our integrity. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. And what does Madison Powell, the woman who finally stopped accepting less than she deserves, think? I smiled at his framing of the question. She thinks that whatever decision I make needs to come from a place of strength, not insecurity or vindictiveness. If we re-engage with Bradford, it should be because it truly serves Apex's best interests, not because I'm seeking validation or afraid to turn down a big client. That sounds like the CEO I've come to admire, Daniel replied, raising his glass in a small toast. The month following the wedding had brought other changes as well. My reconnection with Aunt Diane had blossomed into a genuine friendship. Her perspective as another Powell woman who had fought for recognition in a male-dominated industry was invaluable, and her stories about my father's early years helped me understand his limitations in ways I never had before. More surprisingly, my parents had begun a tentative process of reflection and reconciliation. After the initial shock and anger over the Bradford contract cancellation subsided, my mother had called her voice uncharacteristically subdued. "I've been thinking about what you said at the wedding," she admitted. "About us never celebrating your accomplishments the way we did Kevin's. I didn't want to believe it was true, but when I really looked back, you were right, and I'm sorry." It wasn't an immediate fix for decades of favoritism, but it was a start, an acknowledgement that perhaps they had failed to see me clearly for a very long time. The most profound changes, however, had occurred within me. The wedding incident, painful as it had been, had freed me from the exhausting cycle of seeking approval from people determined not to give it. I no longer measured my success against Kevin's yardstick or sought validation from my parents' limited perspective. This new clarity extended beyond family relationships into all areas of my life. At Apex, I found myself making decisions with greater confidence, unencumbered by the second-guessing that had sometimes plagued me before. In my personal life, my relationship with Daniel deepened as I brought a more authentic version of myself to our connection. Perhaps most significantly, I had launched a mentorship program for women entrepreneurs in the tech industry, specifically those facing family or social obstacles to their success. The program, which I named Visible, provided not just business guidance, but strategies for maintaining boundaries and self-worth in environments designed to diminish both. The first cohort of 20 women had already begun meeting weekly, their stories often painfully familiar echoes of my own experience. But in helping them navigate their challenges, I found healing from my own past wounds. "You know what still amazes me?" I said to Daniel as the city lights began twinkling below us. "How one moment of standing up for myself created this ripple effect that's still expanding." "That's how change works," he replied. "It rarely happens in the big dramatic ways we imagine. It's usually one person making one decision that alters the trajectory just enough to create a new pattern." As the evening deepened around us, I thought about all the patterns that had been broken in the aftermath of that wedding day. Family patterns, business patterns, and most importantly, my own internal patterns of accepting less than I deserved. The text message from Kevin arrived just as Daniel and I were considering ordering takeout. "Dad wants to have dinner next week, just the family, says he has something important to discuss. Will you come?" I showed the message to Daniel. "What do you think?" "I think you've earned the right to set the terms for any family engagement," he replied. "If you want to go, go. If you don't, don't. Either way, you're doing it from a position of strength now, not obligation." I typed my response carefully. "I'll be there, but I'm bringing Daniel. He's important to me and I want him there." Kevin's reply came moments later. "Of course. Mom and Dad will be glad to get to know him better." It wasn't perfect. The scars of decades of family dynamics wouldn't heal overnight. The Bradford contract situation remained unresolved. Kevin and Heather were navigating their new marriage with its revealed fractures. But for the first time, I felt like I was engaging with all of it on my own terms, neither controlled by others' expectations nor defined by their limitations. In the end, the story of the wedding seating chart and the canceled contract wasn't really about either of those things. It was about finally recognizing that my value wasn't determined by where others placed me, but by where I chose to stand. Here's the practical lesson. Your value is not up for negotiation. People will treat you the way you allow them to. Setting a boundary, even when it's terrifying, teaches them how you expect to be treated. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to walk away from a table where respect isn't being served. It sends a clear message, not just to them, but to yourself, that you are worthy of more. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who didn't recognize your worth, or walked away from a situation where you weren't being valued properly? Share your experience in the comments below. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with the people closest to us, but as I learned, they can also be the most transformative. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories about standing in your power, and share with someone who might need a reminder of their own worth today. Thank you for listening, and remember you deserve a seat at the table, and you have the power to walk away if others don't recognize that truth.